Good evening. In July 2025, Umar Khalid wrote a review of my book, The Many Lives of Satire. And I was aware that in these 6 years almost, Umar had read almost 200 books in the prison. And I was also told that the hardcovers of many books that are sent to Umar and many people inside, the hardcovers are thrown off and they're removed because the concern is that many people inside the jail may harm themselves with those hardcovers. And the jail authorities, the court, everybody inside is very strict about this, the harm that it can cause. But at the same time, the state machinery has no regard or concern for the kind of harm it is causing to the people inside by not giving them bail, and there is no trial. Umar Khalid, Khalid Sefi, Shaji Imam, and so many people that we know. But also, Umar in all these years read and wrote. And just like he wrote the review of my book, and unlike the AI summit that is happening outside, where they're all being encouraged to rely on machines and use our attention power, while Umar was writing all of this, he was relying on his scholarship, on his memory. He was doing handwritten notes and writing reviews, articles, and then passing on those handwritten pieces to his friends, Banajotna, Anirban, and many people here who would come and then type them, fix the spelling, sometimes what the references are, sometimes check the numbers. And that's how a lot of these writings that you see in this book, that's how they came together, that's how they were published. So that absolutely remains very important. And today we are here to see what this kind of relentless work and the fact that we keep going back to our scholarship, which our government right now is so scared of because that makes you question everything. This is a product of that. And I welcome you all to the release of Umar Khalid and his world, an anthology of Umar's writings, and many of those who have been imprisoned. And it is a symbol of their mental strength, generosity, and commitment to a better world. I also want to say that we are fortunate that Srinivasan Jain, who's a critically acclaimed journalist with a career spanning over 3 decades, and in this period, he's not just hosted news shows that we're all very scared of now, but he's also done a lot of good, solid ground reporting, which means so much. These years, he's authored so many books. And in our times when either journalism has been sold out or criminalized, he's going to do the keynote today. So over to you, Srinivas.
Well,
Thanks very much indeed, Neha, and also thank you, Shubha and Anirban and the organizers for inviting me here, and also for organizing an event like this, and also for bringing out this book. It's it's an important reminder when you have a book like this come out to underscore the sort of farcical nature of the official narrative against Umar and so many of the others. That there is this way in which, through the quiet subversion of writing, whether it is Umar in jail, or I was speaking about Anand Teltumde, who is embroiled in the Bhima Koregaon case, he comes out of prison, and most recently he picked up his pen and wrote a compelling polemic against the caste census. That this sort of reminds that these are individuals who are doing what they have always been doing. They are scholars, readers, writers, and teachers, as deeply committed to ideas as they are to constitutional values. In sharp contrast to this whole bogey of Tukre Tukre gang and people who are seeking to break the nation. We reached a point now with the prolonged incarceration of Umar and the others, where tyranny has turned farcical. Even in the case where bail is finally being given to some of these individuals in dribs and drabs, it seems to be less a case of judicial process than judicial embarrassment. It's almost like, as they say in Hindi, आंखों की शर्म आ जाती है court को. That how long can you keep these people behind bars, given these sort of manohar kahaniya type of FIRs and charge sheets, and given the absence of any kind of trial. This is, in some ways, as everybody from Hannah Arendt to Charlie Chaplin have reminded us, the natural arc of tyranny, that at some point it does descend into the absurd. But that is not to say that the guiding principles of this regime, which has led them to arrest and jail and keep in jail as long as possible these individuals, is a laughing matter. Principle number one is, of course, the unprecedented crackdown on any kind of political and ideological opposition in this country. Abuse of state power is not new in India, but the manner in which everybody, from whether they are up and coming campus leaders, student agitators, all the way up to parliament, and everybody in between, opposition parties, rival state governments, academics, journalists, the entire playbook that we've seen over the past dozen or so years are put away. That's something we've not seen in recent memory. And that has had a devastating effect on democratic and ideological contestation in this country. Families have been uprooted, individuals have had to endure countless trauma. Father Stan Swami lost his life in jail. So no laughing matter. The other guiding principle, of course, which particularly applies, the regime's guiding principle, which particularly applies to people like Umar and Shardil Imam, is the need to manufacture Muslim villains, to keep alive this mogi of Hindu khatre mein hai, this kind of constant conspiracy theorizing and a new jihad every minute. Where I think last it was fertilizer jihad, and I think now we're at knuckle jihad. But there may be more, even as we speak, more are being manufactured. That too, as we know, has been deeply traumatic for our communal temperature. There is everyday violence. There are countless hate crimes. There is high-level hate speech. There is institutional prejudice baked into the system now. So again, this is all, this is all serious business. But then there is the other side to it, which is that unlike other quote-unquote committed democrats like Orban and Putin and Erdogan, our leader still likes to go to world capitals and say that India is a mother of democracy. Now, as a famous philosopher once said, आप chronology समझिए. ये chronology किसी को समझ नहीं आ रही. That morning में you jail your critics and evening में आप जाके कहते हैं you are the mother of democracy. So, at some point, I guess you have to laugh. Equally farcical is when the ruling regime and their cronies and cheerleaders in the media, when confronted with all of this evidence of the abuse of state power, brought out that much overused phrase that the law will take its own course. Now, this was always a dubious cliche in the Indian context, but has never felt more meaningless than it does today. The law was certainly not taking its own course when Kapil Mishra is standing next to a cohort of uniformed policemen and threatening to take the law into his own hands. And if you jump timelines, the law is certainly not taking its course when the sitting chief minister of a state in Assam is openly threatening to disenfranchise Muslims, is inciting the public to act against them. And when you move the Supreme Court, I believe yesterday said that don't come to us. We don't want to get into a political authority. The official handle of the Assam BJP is posting genocidal memes featuring the same chief minister, no action. And by the way, this is something that I don't think got enough attention. The Home Minister of this country, at a public platform like this, says that the growth of population of Muslims in this country is because of infiltration, not fertility. So labeling an entire swath of this populace as illegal. Again, law certainly not taking its own course. So there is this tipping point where oppression can descend into the theater of the absurd. But we mustn't assume that a sell-by date on tyranny. Because this regime, I believe, sustains itself not just through repressive practices, but a whole complex set of factors, political factors and so on, which is not the subject of today's conversation. But like all regimes, all empires, change will come. It's just when and how is not clear. What I think we can say with far greater certainty is how history will judge this moment when we look back. Who will it be kinder to? Will it be the insecure tyrants and their cheerleaders and their cronies? Or will it be those who, against overwhelming odds, stuck to their principles, bore witness to our democratic backsliding, and spoke truth to power? I think on that, we can be fairly sure how the chips will fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Srinivasi. Let's see, law taking its courses. Something again we need to think about and maybe question. I now invite Anirban, Banutotska, and Chokobrata to read some extracts from the book. And a lot of times, because friends always step in to do a lot of stuff, friends, in this case, also have put together this book. Anirban and Banutotska are also researchers and activists, Chokobrata is an artist. So I'm sure they'll have their own perspectives to bring in and tell us how and why they curated this book and what are the various things to look forward to when reading this. Anirban, Banutotska, and Shubham.
Where do we start? Thank you all for being here this lovely evening, despite the AI summit and the traffic hazards. Thank you, Neha, for taking custody of our time together. Thank you, Srinivasan, for your really sharp, targeting, compassionate words. Where do we start? We must begin with acknowledging the times we breathe in, times that recur, being of the theatre of the absurd, when lies masquerade as history, when genocide passes as self-defense, and legality becomes only a tool to subvert justice. It has been almost 6 years that peaceful anti-CAA protesters have been behind bars. We acknowledge every waking hour that freedom has eluded their quest to justice. Just as we began, we played a video of the speech that Dr. Umar Khalid made on the 17th of February 2020 in Amravati, where he talks about answering violence with peace, hatred with love, and tyranny with nonviolent civil resistance. Today is the 17th of February. Today is 6 years from that. That speech is part of the key body of evidence that the prosecution has used to stall his allegations time and again. And I heard the prosecutors say, when Umar means peace, it's a word for war. That's the level of the farce that we are facing. We must acknowledge that public prosecutors are maintaining a straight face while arguing one of the most untenable cases silence in whispers when he criminalizes democratic dialogue and blurs the lines between protest, legitimate protest, and terrorist activity. And we must acknowledge the regime for its timidity in the way that it responded to the people who actually called for hate speech. Some of those people who said, Goli Maro Salo Coach, has become the favorite slogan. It was said even a couple of days ago at a police station. They are ministers in the central as well as in the state government in Delhi. There is a whole litany, a whole history of lies that is behind the incarceration of Umar Khalid. That being the context, we must also first acknowledge the many pieces of the mosaics that come together to make this book. We acknowledge the authors of all the pieces and the margin notes. You will see a particular structure of main pieces and margin notes in the book that serve as a testament to the times and to the audacity of themselves as truth tellers. We acknowledge the voices that come into the book as quotations, as citations, and the poets and the illustrators who have contributed to the many shades of this book. While a few of the articles in this collection are hitherto unpublished, the rest were written at different junctures, and that's why the book is also an archive. It indexes all that has been written. So we would like to express our gratitude to publications such as the Caravan, the Wire, the Telegraph, Print, Intercept, Economic and Political Weekly, Midday, HuffPost, Outlook India, The Quint, Scroll, and Article 14. We also acknowledge the curated platforms like India Love Project and Constitutional Law and Philosophy, from which we have taken pieces that have contributed to the book. We must acknowledge those who have over the years been tearing to the banality of the prosecution's arguments, and that is the efforts of Pradeep Pais, Sania Kumar, Rakshanda Deka, Sahil Khurana, Kapil Sibal, and Chandar Uday Singh for being Umar's voice in the many courtrooms and in the many cycles of this case as it has traversed back and forth from Sessions Court to the Supreme Court to the Sessions Court to the Supreme Court. Finally, we both acknowledge and express our solidarity towards Umar's family, particularly his parents and siblings, for being resolute in the face of repeated denials of justice. We acknowledge both their silent tears and the resolute voice that refuses to tremble in the face of the powers that be. There are countless voices, untold sighs, 1,000 prayers, and innumerable well wishers of Umar whom it is impossible to acknowledge except in spirit. The book, in fact, is an attempt to reach out to them and also to expand the circle so as to engage many of them in the conversations that we hope will carry on, not just between us and Umar behind the bar, but also much after his release in general society. This book, as Neha said, is a testament to friendship and an act of solidarity. By holding it in your hands, by reading it, by purchasing, borrowing, or stealing it, so we said, you make yourself Umar Khalid's friend. You're enlarging the circle of associates of a thoughtful young man currently held hostage, captive and prisoner since the 13th of September 2020. That's almost 6 years. Imagine 6 years, it will be 7 years soon by the time the next bail application goes around. In the life of a young man, prime years of his life, when he should have been teaching, researching, writing, publishing, talking to all of us, even boring us at night with his repeated anecdotes about cricket. Monojotsna has a bone to pick with that, since she's a football fan. He's a historian, a prisoner of conscience, an under trial, a friend, a beloved, a brother, a son, a comrade. He's a very argumentative Indian who loves cricket, bad puns, children, Italian food, and nothing more than to talk late into the night about anything and everything. He sings off tune but hums. He dances badly but dances. He reads murder mysteries and books in cricket and long historical and philosophical treatises. He once dreamt of being a national level cricket player. He gets carried away when he speaks sometimes. He has a low, staccato voice that listens before it speaks. He's our friend. Now he's waiting for you to read this book and become his friend, his advocate. For almost the entirety of the past several years, Umar Khalid has had no control over his time, no liberty of movement and action, except the 3 brief, week-long periods of interim bail where he came out to attend family functions, and has been unable to freely associate with his friends, comrades, and well-wishers. He has not been able to pursue either his scholarly research, nor been able to take up gainful unemployment. And it's not only he who is missing this time, we are missing him, because he would have been a lively intelligent, compassionate interlocutor to our times, and this regime deprives of us of that opportunity to listen to him and to think with him. Umar and others like him are in prison primarily because they directly challenge the project of a populist, xenophobic, right-wing, culturally majoritarian, authoritarian, statist disruption of democracy, an unleashing of authoritarian chaos that seeks to foreclose and inhibit an inclusive, open, secular space for an evolving dialogue about the future of Indian society. This contest between these two visions of the future is central to the long process of churning that is currently underway in India. The fate of Umar Khalid is a detail in the mosaic of this reality. Opposing this authoritarian formation are the partisans of a vision of the future that is open, democratic, and a space for everyone, including minorities of all kinds. Here, by space, what is meant is that minorities, be they of religion, caste, ethnicity, language, gender, or sexuality, find room to build a capacity to express themselves and flourish in non-repressive, non-sectarian ways. In the specifically Muslim context, it has also meant something particularly remarkable. The weakening of the hegemony of a traditional, clerical, often misogynist patriarchy, including those who are being patronized by so-called secular political parties in order to cultivate what they thought was a Muslim vote bank, and the open assertion of power and confidence by young, educated, articulate, subaltern Muslim women. Shaheen Bagh was that moment. And Umar Khalid was one of the great listeners to the women of Shaheen Bagh, granddaughters, mothers, sisters, friends, and daughters. He listened to the entire span of generations of women who were articulating a profound philosophical defense of the preamble of the Indian Constitution in a way that I think has been unprecedented, not just in India, but in the world, where people read the Constitution aloud as a means of their existence. We know that there is an undeclared emergency. Srinivasan Jain referred to it very eloquently. And I think Umar Khalid is one of the many people caught up in this process of an undeclared emergency. We remember that it's not just Father Stan Swami, but also Pandu Narote and student activist Kanchan Nanavare, who died in detention during this period due to medical negligence. Nanavare had been arrested in 2014, died of heart failure in January 2021, still awaiting trial. Some months after his release, Professor G.N. Sai Baba also succumbed to a failing health, was disallowed medical treatment in jail, despite him living with 90% disability. Thousands of people have been arrested between 2020 and 24. In the introduction, you will find a kind of statistical compilation of how many per year, and it amounts to actually 3 people per day if you do the math. Now, it's still fewer numbers than what happened under the Maintenance of Indian Security Act during the years of the emergency. But the emergency lasted 21 months. Umar Khalid has been jailed for more than almost 6 years. So there is a difference and there is a similarity. There is perhaps an attenuation of numbers, but an intensification of repression. Umar Khalid is too young a man to be offered a fellowship. He has his life's work ahead of him. And we know that because of his life's work, the attempt to create a just, equal, diverse, peaceful, and open society in this part of the world, where majorities and minorities of all kinds can live in freedom and with dignity, is an ambition we all share. And so this is not a fellowship. It is a reminder, a resetting of priorities, a marking of goals, and an instruction of many different kinds of roadmaps for the future in which Umar Khalid can play cricket and write history, including of a difficult time. He is not alone in prison. There are many others like him who are still in prison or who have spent long periods in prison. 2 years ago, on the second anniversary on one of the anniversaries of Umar's arrest, I had written at the end of a text which was intended to be a short manual for prison visits the following, and I read that in it. If you have a friend in prison because they refuse to quest the bitter denial of freedom and dignity in the country that is currently underway, please go and see them. Make it a part of your routine. Don't put it off till some other time. This time that is passing will never return. They need you now, and you need them. Don't let them feel that they are uncared for, forgotten. They are the keeper of all our conscience. We hope that soon Omar and all his comrades, known and unknown, in prison, will walk free, not just on bail, but acquitted of the crimes that they did not commit. And that the people who put them away in the first place, because they are cowards who cannot countenance a society which people freely speak their mind, face the consequences that they deserve for their misrule and tyranny. That day will come, Omar Khalid will be free. Thank you all for being with us today and for waiting for that day when Umar will be with us too.
Thank you so much, Shubhra. And quickly come to Vadadosta. Apart from your differences on cricket and football, Shubhra also happened to mention that Umar is fond of Italian food, but you seem to have mentioned that he likes dal chawal. So, do you like to read out the extract and tell us?
The dal chawal part is not untrue. That's also that's his comfort food. Uh, but anyways, I'd like to be very quick. I'll read out a piece that is a part of this book. This last 5 years for all of us friends who have been to jail to vigil to keep track of his well-being and all that. Apart from the larger fight for justice, it's also had been a fight of anxiety and a constant feeling for all of us that Umar is in jail. And for me, Ban, Apiksha, all of us really, not just, it's about all of us. Whenever we are at some place, suddenly it will ring in the back of your mind that, we are here, but Umar is not. We go to restaurants, me and Ban, often like there are pet friendly restaurants. We look for Umar friendly restaurants and try to think that, when he comes out, is this restaurant a safe enough place for getting him? So that constant restlessness is a part of our daily journey. Now, this piece that I want to read out, it's a little dystopic, but it's a part of, it's also the part of the life that we have been leading for the last 6 years. It's called A Conversation with Umar Khalid That Bond Me. The time allotted for the weekly video call in Bihar Central Jail is just 15 minutes. And you don't talk about the weather with such time constraints, or do you? How about when the country's north is entrapped in a heat wave that has started to hunt lives? This came out last year, by the way. Like we had completed 4 years at that time. When the dry, deforested, deserted planet and its toxified climate are hitting back at us with one of the most morbid and cruel heat waves, then weather does become a pertinent issue of conversation, even concern. I inquired about the heat situation inside the prison from Umar with the same helplessness and apprehension as I had inquired about the COVID situation 2 years ago. He grinned as usual. I've never felt anything like this, he said, almost chuckling. His grin becomes intolerable in such situations. I get angry and he seems to enjoy that. No, seriously, this is my fourth summer in prison, but the heat this time is unbearable. I've never witnessed anything like this in my life. In fact, older inmates say they haven't ever experienced such a heat wave as well. If you're still reading this and wondering who I am or who I am talking to, it really doesn't matter. This is about the prison conditions of Tihar in Delhi and the heat wave that is severely affecting young and old inmates. The convicts, the under trials, the implicated or the falsely accused ones are all languishing right now in the heat, along with their unfreedom. It's the same cruel condition that is slowly burning lives within the prison walls. Just for your information, I was talking to Umar Khalid, my friend who has been lodged in Tihar since 2020. Umar was implicated by the Delhi police as a mastermind of the Delhi riots and booked in two cases related to the riots. In one case, he was not only given bail but was eventually discharged. Judges who have heard the other case under the more draconian Unlawful Activities Prevention Act refused to grant him and many of his other co-accused bail. However, the trial of this case has not even commenced after 4 years. Now, almost 6 years, it has not even commenced. Still, Umar continued. Since our cells are open in the front with bars, waves of hot wind keep whiplashing inside. We try to put up sheets and cover the bars, but that's hardly a cover. And you expect the heat in the daytime, but at night, when the weather doesn't change even after sundown, it almost feels like a betrayal. And he grinned again. The ceiling is so high that the fan almost has a perfunctory presence, and they don't allow us to use coolers. They let us use blankets and quilts in winter, but no coolers in the summer, not even in the heat. But then the great Indian jugaad happens. I keep sprinkling water on the sheet that hangs on the bar, on my bed, on the floor, literally everywhere. My chakki, that is the cell, often becomes wet and muddy, but the water dries up quickly, much quicker than you can imagine. And the water therapy sometimes runs dry when there is a water crisis. He casually added. I now treat the most uncomfortable part of the conversation. Are people falling sick? Yes, he said. People around me are falling sick. They're suffering from various ailments, especially older people. One person also died. An old man. He dropped dead. Possibly because of the heat, I'm not sure. No one is. But everyone suspects it's the heat that killed him. I can feel my anxiety rising, but I try to calm down. Are you alright? Do you feel any discomfort? I was feeling some cramps in my leg yesterday. All of us are drowsy throughout the day because we hardly get any sleep these days. That's all for now, he said calmly. But please keep drinking plenty of water and also go to the OPD and tell the doctor about this cramps. Your sodium potassium levels might have gotten imbalanced. I try to hide my panic and my anger, my frustration and helplessness yet again. You need to see a doctor and also get on record your discomforts. This heat is indeed unprecedented, I said. I had read on the news that bats were dropping dead from trees. Yes, earlier there used to be a lot of birds that came to our prison premises. The early mornings were filled with their chirpings. Birds hardly come these days since the heat wave started. I wonder what has happened to them, he said. Thank you for the question. Thank you for that. Anirban, you are a researcher, you and Umar have been uh, college forever. You also look at issues of development, inequality, but as accountability, something that you and Umar may have had conversations about and discussed. I want you to read out the excerpt which you will.
Thanks, Neha. Like Bruno mentioned, these jail mulakats are actually the only brief portals. It feels like a time portal really because we literally move from our very fast lives of deadlines, of commitments, of responsibilities which are day to day. And then we move into, after a long walk, into a portal where time is slow, where suffering is slow, where thoughts are slow, and it really feels like talking across two different time zones. I'll also read a few paras from the introduction of the book, but before that, like Neha mentioned, I'll just refer to a conversation in one of these day mulakats that I had with him some time back. Uh, One of those usual day mulakats where I met him across the greased glass window with the 90s style hand receiver in our grip on both ends. He said something that stuck to me. He said, "Man, you all are too connected. You are bombarded with information, something that I don't have here. And I worry. I worry that you will be consuming too much, responding to things, reacting to things on almost a day-to-day basis. But are you absorbing? Are you reflecting?" It stayed with me. He wants us to look for synergies, for possibilities, for solidarities that are yet to be realized. Possibly we feel that the book can serve that purpose. Because for Umar, Khalid Safi, Sharjeen Imam, and for the many others who still remain behind the bars, it is crucial that we keep these conversations going. Because ultimately, it is these conversations that actually give meaning to the time that they are doing behind the bars. Because they find meaning in when we carry on, when we speak, when we express our dissent, they feel that they live with us, they live among us, they live through our actions. Beyond that, as a student of history, I just hope that the book serves as an archive of a rather grim time, but also of one where bigotry was being responded to with defiance, with compassion, and with solidarity. We refer to glimpses, a few glimpses of those in the introduction, and that's what I'll try and read out a few paras from it. The protesting farmers who held protective posters and placards with the portraits and names of Umar Khalid and the others, the anti-CA and the BK-16 prisoners, saw nothing extraordinary in linking their struggle directly to the fate of political prisoners or to the women of Shalimar. To them, the farmers' struggle for dignity and justice was indivisible from the many other struggles for dignity, freedom, and justice amongst minorities, Dalits, women, workers, forest dwellers, displaced communities, students, young people, ex-soldiers, and others that were emerging in response to the regime's degradation. The farmers knew that someone like Omar Khalid, like them, understood this web of connections and knew, again like them, that no one struggle could be pursued in isolation. It is this understanding that Umar Khalid had come to acquire organically by being a Muslim on the Indian left, who was neither willing to mute his identity nor willing to abandon his radical political vision that made someone like him particularly dangerous for the regime. Because the qualities that Umar came to understand and represent as a bridge that could bring the young Muslim women and men to a place where the act of their speaking, listening, and walking together and separately by always acting together whenever necessary with the aim of realizing more free, more democratic, more open spaces in society, in companionship and fellowship with young Dalit or Adivasi or working class or peasant or LGBT persons or those from oppressed populations in Kashmir or Nagaland and Manipur was an emerging threat that the regime, with its narrowing vision of India, could not afford to ignore. If 21st century fascism with Indian characteristics and another that treated citizenship as a question, realized in practice the act of working together in an inclusive fashion. The first dialogue and the mythology of a Hydra embodied in the Citizenship Amendment Act, the exercise of the NRC, and also in the NRC by itself, operationalized by Election Commission as the SIR. The second, the slow organic formation of links between different interest groups, causes, and communities is always going to be a work in progress. For Umar, this meant never losing sight of the importance of comrades and allies who were not Muslim. At the same time, it also meant never accepting the need to underplay a Muslim or Islamic sense of self in the course of forging a political language that would articulate a spectrum of desires and aspirations. It is important to take a pause here and acknowledge the corridor in which such camaraderies were forged: universities. It is these spaces that provided the opportunities to engage with 100 thoughts and 1,000 attentions. One such space, of course, was Umar's alma mater, the much vilified Jawaharlal Nehru University. Coming from the Muslim ghetto next to Jamia Millia Islamia, growing up amid rampant vilification of Muslim youth and Islamophobia, it is in university spaces, in Delhi University, leading up to graduation and in JNU during his higher studies, that he could locate the persecution of the minorities within a larger context of oppression against the margins of the nation. The doctrinal public meetings, the days at the barricades, the nights at the hunger strikes, the polemical pamphlets, the blend of debate within the classrooms and the dharas all came together to provide the perfect habitat for the youth like Umar to understand and integrate the contours of a radical state in collusion with neoliberal pro-corporate policies. It is here that the youth learn to debate, differ, dissent, disagree, and in the process reach higher grades of understanding. It is this cross-fertilization of ideas in the minds of the students and youth that had over the years given many like Umar and many of us the tools to connect the dots, to build solidarities across multiple layers of oppression, and to make allies along the path of a transformative politics. Listening, talking, reading, arguing. These are precisely the kind of activities that make the regime nervous and paranoid. And that is precisely what the book serves to encourage amongst all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Anurag. And like you said in word words, that to teachers for the solidarities that are yet to be realized, and may no struggle be personal isolation. Thank you all for being here. I now invite our next set of panelists. I I invite Apisha Priyadarshini, who's a journalist and Umar's friend, Gautam Bhatia, who's a legal scholar, Sabiha Khanum, who's an activist, also Umar's mother, and Savita Abbas Naqvi, who's a poet. You all please be on the stage. Please join the panel.